The process for periodic EACs is the focus of this part.
Okay, so we've talked about measuring output. And that was important because we're not just measuring the input, the actual cost. So now that we have a good handle on where we are, we've got to consider one of the criticisms of earned value. And that is that we're only driving along in the car looking in the rearview mirror. That's not very good for forecasting or projections. Farthest from the truth. The fact is that we're a lot better at projecting where we're headed because we know where we've been and how we got there. So we've done this training for many years, and we've kind of created a summary here for you. We have a professional actor that is going to present it, and this is part of the total PEP program, and we think you'll find this very useful.
But first, let's clear up some confusion about terms. Estimate at completion, or EAC, is the term in EVMS, which is also used in the Contract Performance Report and the Integrated Program Management Report. In your company, you may be familiar with other terms, such as final indicated cost. All these terms mean the same thing: what the final cost is expected to be. The left side of this chart states the formal definition of the estimate at completion. On the right is an explanation of the definition. Simply put, the EAC is composed of two parts: the cost for what has been done, that is, actual applied costs to date, and the estimated costs for what still remains to be done, or in other words, the estimated costs to completion, or ETC. The ETC is sometimes called the cost to complete forecast. Another way to look at it is like this. This chart shows resources on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. Actual costs, ACWP, have been recorded through time now. We want to calculate the EAC, an estimate to complete confused. The point of the exercise is to determine what remains to be done and then create an estimate to perform that work, just as was done at the beginning of the project. And, of course, once the estimate to complete, ETC, is determined, that is added to what has already been spent, ACWP, to get the EAC. This slide displays the EAC. Note how it shows that the estimate at completion is a dollar value at a point in time and is composed of the actual costs to date plus the estimated cost to complete the work. Simply stated, the estimate at completion is the end point of the projection of the curve. The curve is a time-phased estimate to complete. When developing the estimate to complete, the time-phased resource requirements are determined for labor hours, material, subcontractors, etc. This ETC also results in a time-phased cash flow projection. One note about cash flow projections: if the customer has funding constraints, it is important to establish the performance measurement baseline so that it does not exceed the funding profile. Consequently, the estimate at completion is a vital piece of information. It is essential for both company and customer management to have the best, most accurate EAC in order to make informed decisions regarding the project, as well as the future of the company. Internally, the uses of the EAC are fairly obvious. Resource planning is an ongoing activity. The overhead bases are continually being analyzed. In an earlier part, the overhead rates were calculated, and we had to forecast how much work there was left to be done. The reason for that exercise was to apply the correct overhead rates. Part of the EAC process is assessing the future direct base forecast. Company management must often decide whether to increase or decrease staffing levels or to introduce new skill mixes. Company management wants to know if projects are going to finish on time or extend beyond original goals. A change of a finish date may cause delays and loss of specific resources dedicated to a new contract. Cash flow analysis and profit forecasting are upper-level management concerns, and reliable data are needed to make informed decisions. The estimate at completion is used by the customer primarily to establish funding requirements. The EAC data are identified on the Contract Funds Status Report, or its equivalent, to identify funding needs. The EAC is used to support customer decision-making. A decision to cancel, accelerate, or continue with the next phase could be a direct result of an EAC. With this in mind, the EAC can be subject to a great deal of internal scrutiny. The customer also wants to know about the EAC because their project managers also want to know about the efficiency of projects they're working on in order to apply their resources effectively. There's a lot of competition for resources. A customer almost always has significant funding constraints. The customer needs accurate information as early as possible.
Okay, so we talked about what the estimate to complete provides. What's important is to discuss the process of determining it.
In this part, the EAC process will be reviewed. When it should be done, who should perform the different activities involved, how to go about it, and why do an EAC. The quality of the resultant EAC will be reviewed using generally accepted methods. It is logical to conduct periodic comprehensive EACs. So what is a comprehensive EAC? A comprehensive EAC is a bottoms-up estimate at completion which requires reviewing all the remaining work and completely re-estimating that work. Obviously, this is a big job. A contractor on a large project may take weeks to complete a comprehensive EAC. Contractors usually perform at least one comprehensive EAC annually. More may be performed per internal procedures or the discretion of the project manager. The comprehensive EAC is a bottoms-up estimate, much like the initial proposal process. The monthly EAC assessment is not as stringent as a comprehensive EAC. How is this monthly assessment accomplished? In an earlier part about variance analysis, situations where the control account manager might revise the EAC were discussed. These revisions are usually based on the variance cause, impacts on the project, and the corrective actions taken or proposed. The revisions may be for labor, material, subcontracts, and other elements where the CAM does not believe that the variance is recoverable. The CAM provides rationale to the project manager for the requested EAC change. This is usually accomplished as part of the VAR process. Monthly EACs are assessments between periodic comprehensive EACs. The monthly EAC is a way to keep the EAC and project status current. One of the reasons a comprehensive EAC is more complex than a monthly assessment is because it is a bottoms-up estimate of the work remaining to be performed. Ground rules are established to ensure that all participants prepare their estimates based on the same project status. For example, definition is made for the start month for the EAC, schedules to be used, risk assumptions, subcontractor EAC updates, due dates, etc. The comprehensive EAC should be prepared with the most recently approved forecast schedule so that all participants are estimating against the same plan. This should include important scheduled dates, such as a critical design review, major delivery dates, and contract milestones. Any risks in the schedule that could impact the EAC should also be documented. Then, other factors need to be considered, such as what rates will be used. Will a fiscal year boundary be crossed because of the schedule forecast dates? If the rates are going to change, how much for increased salaries? 2%? 6%? Changes in rates will be a part of the rationale for the EAC change. Once the ground rules are defined, the project's progress to date must be established. What has been accomplished must be accurately assessed to determine how much work is remaining. An estimate is then made of the cost and schedule for the work yet to be done. The Control Account Manager, or CAM, must evaluate progress and estimate the resources required to complete the remaining tasks. An analyst and possibly estimators in certain functions support the CAM. Their job is to put the evaluation in the proper format and to verify that the assumptions were adhered to, as well as to provide summarized data for executive management. The project office summarizes the data for the review and takes the lead in providing analysis.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a comprehensive EAC. And what's important is to talk about the methodology. And in addition to that, we'll talk about the differences between it and the normal monthly estimate of complete.
Now we're going to spend some time discussing the comprehensive EAC methodology. We'll see that the basic process of EAC development is the same whether it's for a comprehensive EAC or a monthly assessment. The main differences are in the degree of detail, intensity, and formality. The general process works something like this. It starts with the project office establishing and communicating the EAC requirement and transmitting this requirement to functional managers and/or integrated product teams, IPT leaders, and in turn to CAMs if that person is different from the IPT leader. The project office puts together a kickoff package that has all the assumptions, such as schedule and rates to be used. The IPTs and CAMs prepare resource estimates and review these with their functional managers. The project office prices out the resources. And together with the CAMs, IPTs, and functional managers, resolves any anomalies or disconnects. The information is reviewed with the project manager and, if acceptable and approved, is input to the automated performance measurement system. The reports are reviewed for accuracy and results are compiled. The project manager approves the final estimates and presents them to the customer in an acceptable format, usually the CPR or IPMR. The EAC rationale is an explanation of how, substantiation, and why, justification for the EAC change, if it did, and it documents the CAM's basis of estimate. Statements such as more work than expected are not acceptable. What specific work and the detailed estimate of how much more work is needed should be documented. The risks associated with the remaining work should also be addressed in the EAC rationale. Clearly worded, complete definitive facts will assist management in making informed decisions on the acceptability of the EAC revision. It will also help to have the facts documented should there be a customer review or follow-up audit. This is an example of a worksheet that could be used for EAC documentation. It has information about what is yet to be accomplished as well as the BAC, EAC, and VAC. There are calculations for EACs that can help to determine the realism of the EAC. These will be discussed in the next part, indices. Those who use worksheets to document their EACs consistently derive more accurate EACs. This is a companion form to the previous one. This part defines the remaining work and provides the basis of estimate for each task. The bottom portion of the form is used to time phase the work packages and/or planning packages by months, then semi-annually, then annually for 2 or 3 more years, and then summarizes the result in a total estimate to complete for the control account. Each control account would have at least one of these forms prepared to support the ETC and EAC effort. The most important factor in developing an EAC is to have experienced people determining it. These would be the control account managers and the management team supervising those CAMs. Complexity factors are also important. Most often, the estimates are from smaller, lower-level tasks. CAMs estimate their respective tasks, and the total estimate is aggregated at the overall project level. Once constructed, the EAC quality will be tested by the use of mathematical estimates. A significant amount of time will be spent on these mathematical estimates, and some fairly interesting comparisons can be drawn from them. Here's a lesson learned when developing an EAC. Do not just look at what has been spent to date. An estimate to complete starts with what has been accomplished and determining the work remaining to be accomplished. That's why it is important to start from the BCWP, not the ACWP, when developing EACs.